welcome to Who Viewed My Profile, or Who Viewed My Profile podcast with Adam Houlihan and Chris J. Reed, the Mohawk guy. And the reason why Adam and I basically suggested and created this podcast is very much about we're joining forces as two companies, Prominence Global and Black Marketing. And we wanted to share the tips and the expertise with each other's followers, but also because I don't know about you, Adam, but I don't really see very many good podcasts out there that talk about LinkedIn, especially when it comes to YouTube. Like I go through them and go, well, they're not doing very well, or I look their profiles up on LinkedIn and their LinkedIn profiles are incomplete, or they're not sharing any content. It's like, well, how can you be telling other people what to do on a podcast when your own profile isn't very good? I mean, what was your motivation behind doing this?
Yeah, very similar. It's, I remember we had a conversation last week, and there was somebody online on LinkedIn, of course, talking about how they had actually worked at LinkedIn. And then when we looked at her profile, it was terrible. And you think, wow, how can that be? But, and yes, you're right. Podcasts just don't seem to really focus on the really core important stuff, and LinkedIn changing so quickly. Where we've had all these good live events and things that you and I have been doing in the past and still will do, we thought, okay, podcast is just a great way to be keeping update more regularly. Every couple of weeks, we can be talking about good things. And that, and like you said, we probably should talk about the way, people are saying, well, Chris Reed, Adam Houlihan, these guys are competitors. Why are they, what are they doing together? So you want to talk about black marketing?
Black marketing's been going for 14 years, as you know, Adam, which is about the same time as Prominence Global. And because we both saw a gap in the marketplace, I saw one in Asia, you saw one in Australia, we both have now global clients. And that's the key to both what we do, is that podcasts can get out there and basically communicate with people globally, particularly when it's on YouTube as well as it's on Spotify and Apple and other places, and that people can listen to it, people can watch it, people can see we're real people and see our authenticity. But it is all about kind of sharing tips, because LinkedIn's changing all the time, but still the fundamentals are there. I created Black Marketing because I saw that people didn't know how to use LinkedIn, and they still don't know how to use LinkedIn. Even people who work for LinkedIn don't know how to use LinkedIn, which amuses the hell out of me, because I'm looking at this guy, but you work at LinkedIn. And often they will give me abuse if I approach them and they've left LinkedIn maybe 10 years ago, but their profile's incomplete and they're now a founder. So I approach them and go, but your profile's incomplete. I can help you if you don't have time. It's like, I used to work for LinkedIn, I don't need to be told what to do. I said, but why is your profile incomplete then? Why aren't you sharing any content? Why haven't you updated your services section? So it's the fundamentals haven't changed.
No, that's right. And probably that leads into a good question. It's like, why is it that LinkedIn is such a powerful platform for this? And why is it that it's so easy to get wrong? So, and I know that's one of your super strengths. So what's your opinion? Like, why is it so important to be on LinkedIn?
I mean, it's phenomenally important because the first search you do is you search something on Google, or these days Gemini or ChatGPT, whatever it happens to be, and your LinkedIn profile comes up top, because LinkedIn is a trusted social media platform, unlike the other platforms which are not. And it's always amuses when people go, why isn't Facebook trusted and Instagram trusted? Because you don't say where you work. You don't get verified. You don't basically have any idea who the people who are commenting or doing anything on LinkedIn, on other platforms actually are. You also can't really see who you both know, whereas on LinkedIn you can. You can see who you both know. You can see who you both, how many mutual connections you have, for example. That's one of the strengths of LinkedIn is, if I send a message to someone, they have like 1,000 mutual connections. They're much more likely to be receptive than if you send a message to someone who only has, say, one or two or none at all, which is why I never ever do third connections, for example. So it's all about the power of the platforms in the community and the connections and the social adhesion, which you don't get in other platforms, but also because you and I are both verified on LinkedIn. Most people now are verified on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn are very, very hot on making sure that everybody on there is a real person and not a bot, for example, which is very, very important when it comes to communicating.
Yeah, it's a good point on like bots, because one of the things I love about LinkedIn is how I'm not saying there's no bots on there, obviously, but their ability to detect it and shut it down before they really get hold is pretty good. Like it's well over 90% to get taken out, within hours of. So that that's not to say everyone who's on there is active, but that they're generally speaking real people, and 100% if their profile is verified, which it's one of those things I get asked all the time. Should I verify my profile? And it's like,
no brainer, isn't it?
yeah. But it's funny that some people are a bit cautious about the process of it. But apart from that, so apart from the process, is there a value proposition in being?
Yeah, I mean, some people object to putting their passport into LinkedIn. It's like, well, if you're going to trust anybody, you're going to trust kind of LinkedIn to actually do this. I wouldn't do it with something like Facebook, but LinkedIn, what's the worst that can happen? They already know where you work. They already know most of your details anyway. So it's very important that you do get verified and you make sure that you're talking to a real person. I mean, you and I can both spot when you basically have fake people. I had 2 fake people this morning because they're both Chinese, but they lived in America, and they were CEOs of companies with like 2 connections, and they went to Harvard and Stanford, and he went, doesn't look very good at all. I don't believe this person did this at all. And she's communicated with like she's the CEO of Citibank or one of the big banks over there kind of thing, with like 2 connections and went to Harvard and. But they're always pretty Chinese girls or pretty Chinese men kind of thing. And so you can pick them out. You can basically say, well, they're clearly not a real person because they don't have enough connections, don't have credibility, they're not sharing any content, or the content they share is off kilter with what their role actually is, or the mutual connections, if you have any, are also off kilter as well. So it's always good to be skeptical, but if they're verified, you can at least be sure that you're talking to a real person. In the rest of LinkedIn, whether it's in Australia or in Singapore or in America or in Europe.
Yeah, good point. And then of course, there's different people want different things out of having a LinkedIn profile. Yeah. And at the very base level, first impression, like even if you don't want to use it for building your business or getting a new job or whatever, the million things we can do on there. What's your thoughts on or the value of that first impression, which of course comes down to optimizing your profile the correct way? What's your thoughts on as step one for literally every person?
I mean, it's absolutely no brainer. Basically, I don't understand people who don't put a photograph up, for example. It's like, why wouldn't you put a photograph up? It's like,
or they have their settings that you can only see the profile if you're connected.
If you're a second connection, you can't see a photograph. And you go, but surely the people who are first connections know what you look like. The people who are second connections don't know what you look like. And then people say to me, no, but I don't want people to know what I look like. I said, but you've heard of this thing called Google, haven't you? If I Google you, your LinkedIn profile comes up on an image search, for example, so I can see you anyway. But then some of them are very surprised because what they've done is they've gone to the settings, which can be very confusing. I have to say, LinkedIn settings are, absolutely massive. And they've ticked a box which says only their first connections can do it. And they don't know they've done it.
Yeah.
And because all the first connections can see their photograph, but me, say, as a second connection, say, you don't have a profile photograph. And they say, but I do. And I say, no, you don't. Look. And they go, huh, what's happened? Is that this is why? And the trouble is they don't know what they don't know. And I think that's a common denominator when it comes to LinkedIn, Adam, is like people don't know what they don't know because LinkedIn is not very good at explaining it, which is why you and I do talks, why you and I do this podcast. And we're going to go through this over the next kind of 9 or 10 episodes. And we're actually going to explain what LinkedIn does not about how you can actually use LinkedIn. And we think that's a gap in the marketplace. That's why we both have newsletters, we both do posts, and we both do talks. I mean, even yesterday, someone came up to me and said, oh, what do you do? And I go, but you've been following me for 10 years on LinkedIn. It's like, how do you know what I do? Well, I like your posts and everything, but I still don't understand what you do. So I literally had to explain what I do because the problem is that people only spend about 50 minutes a month, Adam. That's the average across the whole world. Obviously, it goes up and down. Australia happens to be actually one of the highest ones, along with places like Austria and Germany and Singapore. But other places, it can be 20, 30 minutes. So you don't actually have very much time to communicate on your profile what you actually do. So you do need to keep it really, really simple and not overcomplicate your banner and your headline about what to do. I mean, do you think that's one of the most common areas where people misunderstand how to use LinkedIn?
100%, especially like you said in that background banner, it's the most visual real estate, and of course, as I know you would say as well, we always say have a premium account because one thing it gives you access is to the 5 scrolling banners. Yeah. But then, of course, when people do that, they think they have to pack every single thing into those 5 banners, forgetting, of course, also that everybody's kind of looking at them on these things. And those banners are very small, so it's less is more. So yeah, definitely, as far as the first impression goes, those banners are gold. Now, of course, if you want to stay on a free account, that's fine. But you really got to, now the thing I get all the time is, oh, I don't want to pay for an account, but how do I use it for lead generation? I said, well, you can't. It's just not, maybe a few years ago you could,
but not
these days it's not going to work. So, if you just want a presence on there, fine, but you still need to have a good first impression. And one thing I think, Chris, that a lot of people just don't keep in mind is that, if I'm here, here with you in Singapore, I've got meetings, lined up, and people will, the first thing they'll do if you're having a meeting is, like you said, they're going to Google you, or they may actually go to your LinkedIn profile. Doesn't matter either way. When they Google you or do a GPT search or whatever, the profile's going to come up. So that's their first impression before you even meet.
Absolutely.
So it's got to be good.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing the thing that you don't like to do on Saturday at an event with someone I'm trying to get as a client. So we'd open a new bar in Sentosa. So I knew when I was going to go there, I knew I'd be meeting people who might become clients who I already knew, who were my connections on LinkedIn. But sure enough, because it's quite social, it was a bar, it was free flow, everyone was having a good time. But the first thing's, oh, what do you do? Oh, I do that. Oh, let's have a look at your LinkedIn profile then. Oh, but no, I don't really use LinkedIn very much, or that's an old picture or whatever. But I said, but you do realize that's the first impression, as you've just seen. How do I know more about you? I look at your LinkedIn and that's the first impression you got. I was like, oh, yeah, right about that. I've got a friend of mine who's a founder who also has got a terrible profile and he's got no leads coming in or getting no investment. It's like, well, this is why, because people are Googling him or going straight to LinkedIn and they don't even see a positive impression or they know what his company does. So it is all about the first impression is not Facebook or Instagram, especially when people like you and I are not even on those platforms. It's going straight to LinkedIn. I can meet people randomly and I say, oh, hi, Chris. I follow you on LinkedIn. I say, oh, why are we not connected? And then I go to their profile and say, we're not connected, but you're following me. Oh, by the way, did you realize that all these things are wrong with your LinkedIn profile? And it's like, sometimes, people can take that negatively or positively, but most of the time people say, oh God, I didn't know you could do that. And that's going back to the premium features, which is a good point, Adam, is LinkedIn are adding more and more premium features and justifying why they're charging money to do it, which I think is a good thing, like the services section, for example. I love the fact that you now add media to the services section only if you're premium. And you can have a custom button. And again, you have to be premium to have that custom button, and you can link it to your smart link. So a lot of people don't realize there are lots of benefits which LinkedIn themselves don't communicate with having a premium benefit. What do you think the number one benefit for having premium?
Well, again, there's premium and there's premium. So I mean, I'm sure we're going to do a whole episode just on that in the near future. But I think if you're going to have premium, now whether you're paying $100 or $150 or equivalent, in whatever country you're tuning in from, is just stump up and get the best one. Get Sales Navigator Advanced, because it means you have access to everything. And as you just mentioned, I'm not sure we'll do a whole episode on it. Is smart links are just they are the game changer.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know the specific percentages, but I would back it in that less than 5% of people on LinkedIn.
I think it's less than 1% have actually got Sales Navigator Advanced.
Or even know how to utilize it, even if they did have it. So I totally agree. Like, as opposed to the one thing I get, not a lot these days, but people say, "Oh, I just thought it was like for how you where you have your resume."
Oh, get a job.
So and it is that's its origins was job job search and looking for jobs and things like that. And it still has that element to it. There's no doubt, but it's so much more than that now. And I think if you come down to, even if you do have a job. And you're looking to move up a corporate ladder or whatever that might be, or transitioning from that into your own entrepreneurship or whatever it might be, you need a personal brand.
Absolutely.
Now, that personal brand might sit under a company brand, and that's fine. But the days of just saying, "Oh, I've got a job. I don't need to be on LinkedIn." I think that's very sort of a myopic view.
Oh, especially in the world of fractional, Adam, because now everyone's a fractional person because they're all worried about getting laid off in their 40s and 50s, but they've got bills and they're going to live till their 80s or 90s, as we just discussed before in Singapore and places like Australia. Who's paying for that? Because the state's not going to be paying for that, so you do need to be working quite hard to do that. And that's where the fractional work comes in, and that's where your LinkedIn profile does come in. Well, I get people all the time who said, I got laid off yesterday, I need a job tomorrow, can you help me? It's like, yes, but your LinkedIn profile's got like 100 connections, hasn't been touched for like 10 years. They said, well, I didn't need to. But I would argue you did need to, because there's always that risk. And a lot of people are quite complacent. Oh, this will never happen to me. I mean, these days, it more likely will happen to you, whether you think you're safe or not, whether you're in a cushy job, if you're owned by especially a tech company, then just lay people off just because they can. And because particularly with AI coming on board, people are taking jobs away. So you do need to be prepared for the fact that you might be made redundant in your 40s and 50s, and you need to say, what's your next step? What's your second journey in terms of how you're going to be, what you're going to do for the next 10, 15, 20 years in terms of work? And that comes to having a fractional experience on your LinkedIn to say, this is what I can do. And we're going to talk about things like skills and experience a bit later on in the series. But that comes down to actually saying, I can do this for you, you can employ me, and I don't need to be employed on a full-time basis. And you need to communicate that effectively on LinkedIn through things like content, but also just simply saying, this is what I can do for you. It's amazing how many people don't even say, this is what I can do for you on their LinkedIn, then say, why is no one employing me? Well, they're not employing you because you don't actually tell anyone what you actually do. I don't know what you do, and I've met you several times. It's like, so you really do need to communicate very effectively. Again, people don't have a lot of time on LinkedIn to actually do that. But here's a question for you, Adam. Kind of, what can listeners expect from the podcast and the series coming up? I'm particularly the event series as well, because this combines with some joint events we're going to be doing.
Yeah. So there's the Who Viewed My Profile podcast, as we're on today. But there's also the Who Viewed My Profile live event. By live event, I mean online events.
Yep.
We live in a global community these days. It's the days of being able to easily do real live events is difficult. So every couple of months, Chris and I, we're going to be getting together online and really going through what it is you guys want to talk about. So, it's not just where we'll come along and say, here's a sort of set presentation. You're going to have the ability to actually send us in advance. What are the things that are topical right now that you're struggling with? And we're going to put the episodes together based on the stuff that you guys share with us. So that's definitely a massive part of it. But I think also just coming back to another point you made around the AI being something that's disrupting all industries. There's no doubt it is. And if you're thinking AI won't disrupt what you're doing, just think back to COVID, like how much of a disruption that was. And I'm sure, actually I know, black marketing doubled in size, the same as Prominence Global did, because all these high level CEOs and C-suite kind of roles disappeared overnight. And we just inundated with people saying, I have to become a consultant, I have to become a whatever, how can you help me? So that if it could happen that quickly and easily with COVID, AI is the next major disruptor, and let's not be silly and think that there's not going to be something else in the future. Of course, it could be the global unrest and whatever that's going on right now. There's so many things that can disrupt industries that it makes a whole lot of sense to just put a little bit of time and energy into your profile now, even if you are in what you think is a safe job. So that's part of, I think, of what the value proposition of this podcast and our event coming up is to make sure that everybody has that ability to just be basically prepared.
And final thought in this is episode 1 of 10, is, you're very good at talking about outcomes and not vanity metrics, Adam. What do you think? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think the days of people having on their profile, and I'm sure you still laugh at it too when you see it, is they in their headline they have 10,400 connections or whatever. That's a vanity metric. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that when you put, I get 1 million impressions on my content. What it is, well, how do you help me? How do you solve a problem? What are the outcomes that are generated by me being connected to you or following you? That's what we're talking about.
Because it is when about quality, not quantity. And you and I are both very focused on, our connections need to be helping us like we can help them. It can't just be vanity connections or vanity followers or vanity metrics when it comes to things like views and likes and comments, for example. It has to actually mean something. And we're going to talk a lot about that, about content later on. But this is the end of the first episode. I hope you liked it. There'll be 9 more coming up.